to find my younger sister Jessica laughing hysterically while my diabetes medication bottles lay scattered across the kitchen floor. Jessica claimed she switched my insulin with saline as a harmless prank to teach me about being too trusting. Within minutes, my blood sugar spiked dangerously. As my vision blurred and I struggled to stay conscious, Jessica continued giggling, saying it was just a joke. I collapsed, realizing my sister had potentially killed me for entertainment. The moment I hit the cold tile floor, everything changed. My body convulsed as diabetic ketoacidosis ravaged my system, but this felt different from any episode I'd experienced before. Through my fading consciousness, I heard Jessica's laughter echo off the kitchen walls like a twisted soundtrack to my potential death. "Jessica," I gasped, my voice barely audible. "Call 911. But she didn't move. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started recording me. "This is so going viral," she said, zooming in on my face as I struggled to breathe. With tremendous effort, I managed to reach my own phone and dial emergency services. "I need help," I whispered to the dispatcher. "Diabetic emergency. Someone tampered with my medication." The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, though it felt like hours. As they burst through the front door, Jessica quickly shoved her phone into her pocket and put on a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Thank goodness you're here," she sobbed dramatically. "My sister just collapsed. She's diabetic and I think she forgot to take her insulin properly." EMT Rodriguez immediately began checking my vitals while his partner questioned Jessica. Something in my blood pressure readings made him frown deeply. "Ma'am, what exactly happened before she collapsed?" Jessica's story flowed smoothly. She just got home from work and was acting really tired and confused. You know how diabetics get when their blood sugar is off. But I fought to speak. "She switched my insulin," I managed to croak out before losing consciousness again. At Mercy General Hospital, Dr. Sarah Thompson ran blood work that made her call for additional tests immediately. The chemical markers in my bloodstream weren't consistent with simple diabetic ketoacidosis. There were foreign substances that had no business being in any human body. "What exactly did you ingest today?" Dr. Thompson asked when I regained consciousness in the emergency room. "My sister said she put saline in my insulin vials as a prank," I explained weakly. Dr. Thompson's expression hardened. "Ms. Williams, the preliminary toxicology results show industrial cleaning solvents in your system. This wasn't saline." My world stopped. Jessica hadn't just replaced my life-saving medication with harmless salt water. She had injected my insulin vials with toxic chemicals that could have dissolved my organs from the inside. 20 minutes later, my parents Robert and Linda burst through the hospital doors, with Jessica trailing behind them, her eyes red from what I now realize were completely fake tears. Jessica had called them with a carefully crafted story about how I was overreacting to her innocent sibling prank. "Honey, we came as soon as we heard," Mom said, rushing to Jessica's side instead of mine. "Are you okay? You must be so scared." Dad approached my hospital bed with barely concealed irritation. "America. I can't believe you're making such a big deal about this. Jessica made a mistake, but calling the ambulance was completely unnecessary. She poisoned me," I said, pointing to the IV drip keeping me alive. "The doctor found industrial chemicals in my blood." Jessica's performance reached new heights. She collapsed into our mother's arms, wailing about how she never meant to hurt anyone and how sorry she was for her harmless joke. I just wanted to scare her a little bit. I bought the saline solution at the pharmacy. I don't understand how anything else could have gotten mixed in. My parents bought every word. They spent the next hour comforting Jessica while treating me like I was the problem child causing unnecessary family drama. The disconnect between my near-death experience and their reaction planted the first seeds of a terrible realization that would only grow stronger in the coming days. As the night wore on and the medical staff worked to flush the toxins from my system, I caught Jessica staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. When she thought no one was looking, Her tears disappeared, completely replaced by something cold and calculating that made my blood run colder than the chemicals coursing through my veins. 3 days later, I returned home from the hospital feeling like I'd survived a war zone. My body was still weak from the poisoning, but my mind was sharp enough to notice things I'd previously overlooked. Jessica had been unusually helpful during my recovery, bringing me meals and checking on me every few hours. "I feel so terrible about what happened," she said, setting a cup of tea on my nightstand. "I hope you can forgive me for being so stupid." Something in her tone didn't match the concern in her words. While she was downstairs talking to our parents, I decided to look through her room for any clues about where she had actually obtained the chemicals that nearly killed me. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard under her bed, I found Jessica's private journal. My hands shook as I read entry after entry detailing systematic medication tampering, going back 6 months. The entries were written in Jessica's distinctive handwriting, complete with dates, times, and detailed observations about my declining health. March 15th. Switched America's blood pressure medication with caffeine pills. She complained about heart palpitations all week but couldn't figure out why. This is easier than I thought. April 2nd. Added just a tiny bit of bleach to her insulin. Not enough to kill her immediately, but enough to make her feel sick constantly. She's been calling in sick to work more often. May 20th. Found out about Grandma's will today. America gets everything because she's the responsible one. We'll see about that. The most chilling entry was dated just 2 weeks ago. America's engagement party is next month. If she's not around to claim Grandma's inheritance money, Mom and Dad's business debt problems would disappear. Plus, Derek thinks I'm getting fat, so maybe he'd be more interested if I had some money to spend on myself. Page after page revealed Jessica's methodical plan to slowly poison me while documenting every symptom like a twisted science experiment. She'd been stealing my prescription pads from my nursing bag to forge medications and had researched exactly how much of various household chemicals she could introduce into my system without causing immediate death. I photographed every page with my phone, knowing Jessica would destroy the evidence the moment she suspected I'd found it. My hands trembled so violently I could barely hold the device steady. When Jessica returned upstairs, I was back in my bed pretending to sleep. She sat down beside me and spoke in a voice so sweet it made my stomach turn. "America, I need you to promise me you won't tell anyone else about what happened. Mom and Dad are already so stressed about money, and if this gets out, it could ruin our family's reputation. You know how much Dad's business depends on people trusting us." I opened my eyes and looked directly at her. "Jessica, I know what you've been doing. I found your journal." Her entire demeanor shifted in an instant. The fake concern vanished, replaced by something vicious and predatory. "You went through my personal belongings. That's a violation of my privacy. You've been poisoning me for months," I said, sitting up despite the dizziness. "This wasn't a prank. You've been trying to kill me." Jessica stood up slowly, and for the first time in my life, I felt genuinely afraid of my younger sister. "If you try to turn our parents against me with whatever lies you think you found, I'll tell everyone that you've been stealing medication from the hospital where you work. I'll say you've been using drugs, and that's why you're having all these medical problems." She moved closer to my bed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Who do you think Mom and Dad will believe their perfect daughter, who made one innocent mistake, or their paranoid older daughter who's clearly having a mental breakdown from her medical issues?" Before I could respond, our parents appeared in the doorway. Jessica immediately burst into tears again, throwing herself into Dad's arms. "She's accusing me of horrible things," Jessica sobbed. "She says I tried to hurt her on purpose, but I would never do that. I think the chemicals might have affected her brain." Mom moved to Jessica's side instantly. "America, I'm very disappointed in you. Your sister has been taking care of you all weekend, and this is how you repay her kindness." I tried to explain about the journal, but Dad cut me off before I could finish my first sentence. "Enough," he said firmly. I don't want to hear another word about this ridiculous conspiracy theory. Jessica made a mistake, she's apologized, and that's the end of it. If you can't find it in your heart to forgive your own sister, then maybe you need to take a long look at what kind of person you're becoming. They left my room with Jessica between them, treating her like the victim while I lay alone with the devastating knowledge that my own family would rather protect my attempted murderer than acknowledge the truth staring them in the face. That night, Jessica returned to my room after our parents had gone to bed. She sat in the chair beside my bed and spoke in a voice devoid of any emotion. "I'm going to finish what I started," she said calmly, "but next time I'll be more careful about the dosage. And if you try to stop me or tell anyone what you think you know, I'll make sure the last thing you see before you die is Mom and Dad blaming you for destroying our family." She stood up and walked toward the door, pausing to look back at me one final time. Sweet dreams, big sister. The next morning, I waited until everyone left the house before calling the police. My hands shook as I dialed, knowing this decision would change everything between me and my family forever. But Jessica's midnight threat had made one thing crystal clear. My life depended on getting law enforcement involved before she could make good on her promise. Detective Maria Martinez arrived at my house 2 hours later. She was a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that immediately put me at ease. I showed her the photographs I'd taken of Jessica's journal entries and explained the timeline of my mysterious illnesses over the past 6 months. "Ms. Williams, I need you to understand that these are very serious allegations," Detective Martinez said after reviewing the evidence. "If what you're telling me is accurate, we're looking at attempted murder charges." "I know how it sounds," I replied, "but I'm a registered nurse. I know the difference between accidental poisoning and deliberate chemical exposure." Detective Martinez took detailed notes as I walked her through every incident I could remember. The unexplained nausea that started in March, the heart palpitations that sent me to the emergency room in April, the constant fatigue that made me miss work for the first time in my nursing career. "I want to run these journal entries by our handwriting expert and have the hospital send over your complete toxicology results," she said. "In the meantime, I need you to stay somewhere safe. Do you have any friends or relatives you could visit for a few days?" Before I could answer, Detective Martinez's phone rang. The conversation lasted several minutes, and I watched her expression grow increasingly serious as she listened to whoever was on the other end. "That was interesting timing," she said after hanging up. "The lab just finished analyzing the contents of your insulin vials. They found industrial floor cleaner bathroom bleach and traces of rat poison. Someone wanted to cause maximum damage to your internal organs." My stomach lurched. How much of that stuff did I inject into myself? "Enough to cause permanent kidney damage if you'd continued using those vials for another week," Detective Martinez replied grimly. "Ms. Williams, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before answering. Has your sister ever done anything like this before? Any unexplained accidents or incidents where people around her got mysteriously sick?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Why would you ask that? Detective Martinez pulled out a file folder I hadn't noticed before. Because when I ran Jessica's name through our database, I found something concerning. She has a sealed juvenile record that was expunged when she turned 18, but I still have access to the basic details. She opened the folder and showed me a police report dated 5 years ago. Jessica was questioned in connection with a series of food poisoning incidents at the retail store where she worked during high school. 3 employees ended up in the hospital over a 2-month period, all with similar symptoms to what you experienced. "What happened?" I whispered. "The investigation was dropped after your parents hired an expensive law firm to represent Jessica. The store manager was pressured not to press charges, and the affected employees were given financial settlements in exchange for signing non-disclosure agreements." I felt sick to my stomach. My parents knew about this. According to the case notes, they not only knew about the previous incidents, but actively worked to cover them up. The lead detective at the time noted that your parents seemed more concerned about protecting Jessica's reputation than finding out whether she had actually poisoned her coworkers. Detective Martinez leaned forward in her chair. America. I need you to understand something. People who engage in this type of systematic poisoning don't usually start with family members. The fact that Jessica felt comfortable escalating to attempting to murder her own sister suggests she's been practicing this behavior for years. Over the next hour, Detective Martinez explained the investigation process while I tried to process the revelation that my parents had covered up Jessica's previous crimes. She arranged for a full forensic analysis of my apartment, focusing on areas where Jessica would have had access to my medications and food. We're also going to review the security footage from your apartment building, she said. If Jessica has been entering your home without your knowledge, there should be video evidence of her coming and going when you were at work. As Detective Martinez prepared to leave, she handed me her business card and a pamphlet about victim services. I know this is overwhelming, but I want you to know that we take attempted murder very seriously. Based on what you've shown me today, I believe we have enough evidence to obtain a warrant for Jessica's arrest. That afternoon, I called in sick to work and drove to my best friend Sarah's house across town. I couldn't risk staying in my apartment another night, especially knowing Jessica had been entering whenever she pleased to continue her poisoning campaign. Sarah listened to everything with growing horror and immediately insisted I stay with her family until the police investigation was complete. "I can't believe Jessica would do something like this," she said. "But looking back, I always thought there was something off about the way she looked at you during family gatherings." As evening fell, Detective Martinez called with an update that made my blood run cold. "America, we reviewed 6 months of security footage from your building. Jessica has been entering your apartment an average of 3 times per week when you're at work. The timestamps match perfectly with the dates in her journal entries." "What happens next?" I asked. "We're going to arrest her tomorrow morning," Detective Martinez replied. "But I need to warn you about something. When we searched the database for purchases of the chemicals found in your system, we discovered that someone has been buying these substances regularly from multiple hardware stores across the city. The credit card used for these purchases is registered to your parents' business account." The phone slipped from my hands. My parents hadn't just known about Jessica's previous poisoning incidents and covered them up. They had been actively funding her attempts to murder me. Jessica's arrest happened during Sunday family dinner at our parents' house. I wasn't there to witness it, but Detective Martinez called me afterward to describe a scene that revealed the true depths of my family's corruption. "When we arrived with the warrant, your sister was sitting at the dining room table laughing about something with your parents," Detective Martinez told me. "She actually asked if she could finish her dessert before we took her in for questioning." The search of my childhood home uncovered a horrifying collection of evidence that painted Jessica as a methodical predator who'd been planning my death for over a year. Hidden in her bedroom closet, police found detailed floor plans of my apartment, copies of my work schedule, and a comprehensive list of every medication I took, along with research about lethal dosage amounts. But the most damning evidence was discovered in our father's home office. Bank records showed regular cash withdrawals totaling over $15,000 over the past 8 months, all corresponding with dates when Jessica had purchased poison supplies or when I had experienced severe medical episodes. Detective Martinez found text message exchanges between my parents and Jessica that destroyed any illusion I'd maintained about their love for me. Robert to Jessica dated 3 months ago. "The life insurance policy on America is worth $300,000. If something happened to her, we could pay off the business debt and still have money left over for your college expenses." Linda to Jessica dated 6 weeks ago. "Make sure whatever you do looks like an accident. If there's an investigation, we can't have any connection back to our family." Jessica to Robert dated 2 weeks ago. "I've been practicing with different chemical combinations. I think I figured out how to make it look like her diabetes complications finally caught up with her." When I read those messages sitting in Detective Martinez's office, I felt something inside me die. These weren't the desperate actions of parents trying to protect a troubled child. This was a calculated conspiracy to murder me for financial gain. "There's more," Detective Martinez said gently. We found evidence that Jessica has been forging your signature on medical documents. She's already filed paperwork with your hospital trying to establish herself as your medical power of attorney. She showed me forms that would have given Jessica complete control over my medical care in the event that I became incapacitated. The forgeries were sophisticated enough that they likely would have passed casual inspection at busy hospital administrative offices. If her poisoning had succeeded in putting you into a coma, she would have had legal authority to make decisions about your treatment, Detective Martinez explained, including the decision to withhold life-saving interventions. My phone rang constantly over the next several days as my parents tried to reach me. They left voicemail after voicemail, alternating between threats and manipulative pleas for me to drop the charges against Jessica. America, you're destroying this family over a misunderstanding. Dad's voice cracked through the speaker. Jessica is just a kid who made a stupid mistake. You're going to ruin her entire future because you can't forgive an accident. Mom's messages were even more disturbing. If you go through with pressing charges, you'll be responsible for tearing our family apart. Jessica looks up to you so much. How can you be so cruel to someone who loves you? But I had already given my statement to the district attorney's office. The evidence against Jessica was overwhelming, and prosecutors were confident they could secure a conviction for attempted murder in the first degree, along with multiple counts of assault with a deadly weapon. The breaking point came when my parents hired the same expensive defense attorney who had helped them cover up Jessica's high school poisoning incidents. During a pre-trial hearing, their lawyer argued that Jessica suffered from severe mental illness that prevented her from understanding the consequences of her actions. My client is a young woman who has struggled with depression and anxiety for years, the defense attorney told the judge. Her actions, while regrettable, were the result of a psychological breakdown rather than calculated malice. I sat in the back of the courtroom listening to my sister being portrayed as the victim while I was painted as a vindictive family member seeking revenge for a tragic accident. The defense strategy was clear: convince the jury that Jessica was too mentally unstable to form criminal intent, while simultaneously arguing that I was exaggerating my injuries for attention. But then something happened that changed everything. During a routine document review, Jessica's defense attorney accidentally included a file that wasn't supposed to be part of the discovery process. The file contained correspondence between Jessica and someone called Organ Express Solutions, along with detailed medical reports about my kidney function, liver health, and blood type compatibility. The prosecutor, District Attorney Williams, immediately requested an emergency hearing to address the new evidence. In a packed courtroom, she read aloud from Jessica's emails to the black market organ harvesting operation. Subject line: fresh inventory. Available soon. DA Williams announced to the stunned courtroom. Email dated 2 months ago from Jessica's personal account to Organ Express Solutions. Quote, I have access to a healthy 28-year-old female with type O negative blood and excellent kidney function. She's a non-smoker, non-drinker, exercises regularly, and works in healthcare, so she maintains optimal health. I can arrange for a controlled overdose scenario that would preserve organ viability. What are your current pricing rates for a complete harvest? The courtroom erupted in gasps and shouting. Jessica's defense attorney immediately objected and tried to claim the emails were fabricated, but the forensic analysis had already confirmed they came from Jessica's verified accounts. DA Williams continued reading from the evidence file. The response from Organ Express Solutions. We can offer $200,000 for kidneys, liver, heart, and corneas from a healthy type O negative donor. Timing is critical for organ viability. Can you guarantee the subject will be brain dead but physically stable for at least 4 hours? Post-mortem, I felt my world tilt off its axis. Jessica hadn't just been trying to kill me for inheritance money. She had been planning to sell my body parts to the highest bidder. Jessica's mask finally slipped completely. She stood up in the defendant's chair and screamed at me across the courtroom. You always got everything good grades, the nursing job. Grandma's attention, David's ring. Why should you get to keep living when I need that money more than you need your stupid perfect life? The judge immediately called for order, but Jessica wasn't finished. I researched everything your kidneys alone would pay for my entire college education. Your liver could buy me a new car. You're selfish for wanting to keep organs you don't even appreciate. That outburst sealed Jessica's fate. Her own words, spoken in open court and recorded by court reporters, proved beyond any doubt that she had planned my murder with complete understanding of her actions and their consequences. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. As Jessica was led away in handcuffs, I noticed my parents sitting in the front row with expressions I will never forget. They weren't looking at Jessica with horror or disappointment. They were staring at me with pure hatred, furious that I had survived long enough to expose their family business venture. The trial began 6 weeks later in a courthouse packed with media attention and curious spectators. The case had attracted national coverage after details about the organ harvesting plot leaked to local news stations. I found myself at the center of a story that seemed too horrific to be real, even though I had lived through every terrifying moment. Jessica's defense team had replaced her original attorney with someone who specialized in insanity defenses. During opening statements, they painted a picture of Jessica as a deeply disturbed young woman who had suffered years of psychological abuse and mental health issues that culminated in a complete break from reality. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Jessica's new lawyer began, "My client stands before you today not as a monster, but as a victim of untreated mental illness. The prosecution wants you to believe that Jessica Williams is a calculating killer, but the evidence will show that she was suffering from a severe psychological episode that left her unable to distinguish right from wrong." District Attorney Williams took a different approach entirely. She methodically presented evidence showing Jessica's crimes as part of a systematic pattern spanning years, complete with detailed planning research and financial motivation. Jessica Williams spent months researching the most effective ways to poison her sister without detection, DA Williams told the jury. She maintained detailed records of her victims' declining health, like a scientist documenting an experiment. She forged medical documents to gain control over her sister's healthcare decisions. And when simple murder wasn't profitable enough, she contacted black market organ dealers to monetize her sister's body parts. This is not mental illness. This is pure evil disguised as family dysfunction. The first week of testimony focused on the medical evidence. Dr. Thompson from Mercy General Hospital explained how the chemical combination found in my bloodstream would have caused organ failure within days if I hadn't received immediate treatment. The substances Jessica Williams introduced into her sister's medication were not chosen randomly, Dr. Thompson testified. Industrial floor cleaner would damage the digestive system and liver. Bathroom bleach would compromise kidney function. Rat poison would affect blood clotting and brain activity. Together, these chemicals would create a cascading organ failure that would appear to be complications from diabetes if not thoroughly investigated. Expert witness Dr. Patricia Morrison, a toxicologist from the state crime lab, testified about the sophistication of Jessica's poisoning method. Most people who attempt poisoning use a single substance in large quantities, which creates obvious symptoms and evidence. Jessica Williams used multiple chemicals in small doses over an extended period, which is far more difficult to detect and proves extensive premeditation. The prosecution presented Jessica's journal entries day by day, showing the jury exactly how she had documented my suffering, like a researcher recording experimental results. The courtroom fell silent as DA Williams read Jessica's observations about my increasing weakness, confusion, and hospital visits. March 22nd. America called in sick to work again today. She's been having stomach problems all week since I started adding the floor cleaner to her insulin. Mom asked if she's been eating properly. I told her America has always been dramatic about minor health issues. April 15th, emergency room visit number 3 this month. The doctors can't figure out what's wrong with her heart rhythm. If I increase the bleach concentration just a little bit more, I think I can trigger a cardiac episode that would be fatal but look natural. When the prosecution moved to financial evidence, the true scope of my family's betrayal became clear to everyone in the courtroom. Bank records showed that my parents hadn't just funded Jessica's poison purchases. They had taken out a secret life insurance policy on me 18 months ago and had been paying the premiums from their business account. Robert and Linda Williams purchased a $500,000 life insurance policy on their daughter America without her knowledge or consent. D.A. Williams explained to the jury. They listed Jessica as the primary beneficiary with themselves as secondary beneficiaries. The premium payments increased significantly during the months when Jessica's poisoning attempts escalated. The defense tried to argue that my parents were innocent victims who'd been manipulated by Jessica's mental illness, but cross-examination revealed a different story. Under oath, Robert admitted that he and my mother had discussed their financial problems extensively with Jessica and had mentioned multiple times how much easier their lives would be if something happened to me. Did you or did you not tell Jessica that America's inheritance from her grandmother could solve your business debt problems? D.A. Williams asked during cross-examination. Robert squirmed in the witness chair. We might have mentioned our financial stress, but we never asked Jessica to hurt anyone. Did you or did you not provide Jessica with cash to purchase supplies for what she told you were science experiments for school? We gave her money for educational supplies, yes. Did you or did you not know that Jessica was not enrolled in any science courses that would require her to purchase industrial chemicals? Robert's silence spoke volumes. But the most devastating testimony came from an unexpected source. Derek, Jessica's boyfriend, had been granted immunity in exchange for his cooperation with the prosecution. He testified that Jessica had bragged to him about slowly killing me and had shown him printed emails from organ harvesting contacts. Jessica told me that she could make more money from her sister's organs than she could earn at any job, Derek testified. She said America was too stupid to realize what was happening and too trusting to protect herself. Derek's testimony revealed that Jessica had been planning to fake her own grief after my death while secretly celebrating her financial windfall. She had already picked out the car she was going to buy with the organ money, Derek said. She showed me the website and everything. She said it would be like getting paid for finally getting rid of someone who had always overshadowed her. When Jessica finally took the witness stand in her own defense, her performance was nothing like the helpless, mentally ill young woman her lawyers had described. Under gentle questioning from her own attorney, she managed to appear remorseful and confused about her actions. I don't really remember making those journal entries, Jessica testified, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. I was going through a really dark time with depression and anxiety. Sometimes I would write things that weren't true because it made me feel better to imagine having control over situations that felt hopeless. But D.A. Williams's cross-examination revealed Jessica's true nature. Within minutes, her facade began to crack under pressure. Ms. Williams, you testified that you don't remember writing those journal entries. Do you remember contacting Organ Express Solutions? I never contacted anyone about organs, Jessica replied firmly. D.A. Williams pulled out a printed email and read the subject line aloud. Fresh inventory available soon. You wrote that email from your personal account to a black market organ dealer. Do you remember writing it now? That must have been someone else using my account. Someone else who knew your sister's blood type, medical history, and work schedule. Someone else who had access to your email account for months without you noticing. Jessica's calm demeanor began to slip. I'm telling you, I never wrote those emails. D.A. Williams pressed harder. You also testified that you were suffering from depression and mental illness during the time period when you were poisoning your sister. Were you too mentally ill to research chemical combinations and their effects on human organs? I don't know what you mean. Were you too mentally ill to forge your sister's signature on medical power of attorney documents? I never forged anything. Were you too mentally ill to calculate dosages that would cause organ damage without immediate death? Jessica's mask finally cracked completely. You don't understand what it's like to live in someone's shadow your whole life, she shouted at D.A. Williams. America got everything handed to her while I had to fight for scraps. She had the perfect job, the perfect boyfriend, the perfect health, the perfect relationship with Grandma. Why should she get to keep all of that when I needed it more? The courtroom fell silent as Jessica's true feelings poured out. I worked so hard to figure out exactly how to make her sick without killing her too quickly. I researched everything about chemical interactions and organ preservation. I planned every detail perfectly. If she had just died quietly like she was supposed to, everyone would have mourned for a little while and then moved on with their lives. Jessica's defense attorney frantically tried to stop her testimony, but she ignored him completely. I'm not crazy. I'm not mentally ill. I just wanted what should have been mine all along. America was selfish for trying to keep a life she didn't even appreciate. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a verdict of guilty on all counts: attempted murder in the first-degree conspiracy to commit murder assault with a deadly weapon fraud and conspiracy to commit organ trafficking. The judge sentenced Jessica to 25 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for 15 years. My parents received sentences of 15 years each for their roles in the conspiracy, though their lawyer successfully argued for the possibility of parole after 8 years with good behavior. As I sat in that courtroom listening to Jessica's sentencing, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: relief. For the first time since finding her journal, I knew with certainty that Jessica would never be able to hurt me or anyone else again. The months following the trial brought revelations that transformed my understanding of my entire life story. While cleaning out my parents' house before it was sold to pay their legal fees, I discovered a hidden safe in my father's closet that contained documents my family had kept secret for nearly 3 decades. Among the papers, I found my original birth certificate, which listed different parents than the people who had raised me. There were also adoption papers dated when I was 6 months old, along with a file containing letters from my biological family that had been intercepted and hidden for years. The private investigator I hired, Margaret Chen, explained what had really happened. America, you were adopted as an infant by Robert and Linda Williams after your biological parents died in a car accident. But what the adoption agency didn't know was that you had a twin sister who was placed with a different family. Margaret showed me a photograph that made my heart stop. A woman who looked exactly like me stared back from a professional headshot wearing a doctor's coat and smiling with the kind of warmth I'd never seen in my adoptive family's faces. This is Dr. Diana Foster. She's been searching for you for over 10 years through various adoption registries and private investigators. Jessica discovered Diana's search efforts 2 years ago and has been intercepting all correspondence to prevent you from ever learning about your biological family. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Jessica hadn't just been trying to kill me for money. She'd been terrified that I would find my real family and discover how much better life could be with people who actually loved me. Diana Foster lived in Seattle, where she worked as an emergency room physician at Seattle Children's Hospital. When Margaret arranged our first phone call, Diana cried for 20 minutes before she could speak coherently. "I never gave up hope that I'd find you," Diana said through tears. Our biological parents left letters for both of us explaining how much they wanted us and how sorry they were that they couldn't raise us themselves. I've been carrying your letter for 15 years, waiting for the day I could give it to you. Diana had grown up with adoptive parents who treated her like a precious gift rather than a burden. She'd been encouraged to pursue her dreams, supported through medical school, and loved unconditionally by a family that celebrated her achievements instead of resenting them. "I have so much to tell you about our parents," Diana said. "They were both teachers who died in a drunk driving accident when we were 5 months old. They left detailed letters about their hopes for our futures and how much they loved us, even though they barely got to know us." Over the next few weeks, Diana and I talked for hours every day, sharing stories about our parallel lives and marveling at the similarities between us, despite being raised in completely different environments. We'd both chosen careers in healthcare, both struggled with the same rare diabetes complications, and both had an inexplicable love for classical music and mystery novels. Diana's adoptive parents, James and Patricia Foster, welcomed me into their family with open arms when I flew to Seattle to meet them. For the first time in my life, I experienced what it felt like to be in a room where people were genuinely happy to see me rather than tolerating my presence. We always knew Diana had a twin sister somewhere, Patricia explained over dinner at their warm, comfortable home. We've been hoping and praying for years that you would find each other. Diana talked about you constantly when she was little, even though she didn't remember you consciously. James showed me photo albums documenting Diana's childhood, pointing out moments when she had talked about her other sister, or drawn pictures of two girls who looked identical. She never forgot you, America. We always told her that family isn't just about blood, but her connection to you was something deeper than we could explain. The Foster family helped me understand what normal family dynamics actually looked like. They asked questions about my interests, celebrated my nursing career, and treated my medical condition as something to manage rather than something to resent. When I told them about Jessica's poisoning attempts, they responded with appropriate horror and protectiveness rather than denial and blame. Diana took a week off work to help me process the trauma of discovering that my entire childhood had been built on lies and manipulation. She connected me with therapists who specialized in adoption, trauma, and family abuse, giving me tools to understand that the problem had never been with me, but with the people who were supposed to protect and nurture me. You survived something that would have destroyed most people, Diana told me during one of our long conversations about our childhood experiences. The fact that you're still capable of trust and kindness after being raised by people who saw you as disposable proves how strong you really are. Through Diana's research, I learned that Jessica had been systematically destroying correspondence from my biological family for years. Letters, birthday cards, graduation gifts, and even money that had been set aside for my education had all been intercepted and hidden to prevent me from learning about the people who had been searching for me. Jessica found out about Diana's search through social media, Margaret explained during our final meeting. Diana had posted your baby photo on adoption reunion websites, and Jessica recognized it immediately. Instead of telling you about your sister, Jessica decided to eliminate the threat by eliminating you. The Foster family invited me to spend Christmas with them that year, giving me my first experience of a holiday focused on love and gratitude rather than obligation and resentment. Diana's adoptive siblings, Marcus and Elena, treated me like a long-lost family member, sharing stories about growing up with Diana and asking about my own experiences with genuine interest rather than judgment. On Christmas morning, Patricia gave me a wrapped package that contained the letter my biological parents had written for me before they died. Through tears, I read their hopes for my future, their expressions of love for a daughter they barely had time to know, and their wishes that I would grow up surrounded by people who cherished me for exactly who I was meant to become. We hope that whoever raises our beautiful America will see the light in her eyes and the strength in her spirit, my mother had written. We pray that she will be loved fiercely and encouraged to pursue whatever makes her heart sing. Most of all, we hope she knows that she was wanted, planned for, and loved from the moment we knew she existed. Reading those words, I finally understood the difference between being wanted and being tolerated. My biological parents had seen me as a gift, while my adoptive family had seen me as an obligation that interfered with their plans for Jessica. Diana helped me establish a memorial scholarship in our biological parents' names for nursing students who had overcome family trauma. Working together on something meaningful gave us a way to honor both our shared loss and our newfound connection. As the year progressed, I began to build a life in Seattle near Diana and the Foster family. The distance from my hometown helped me process my trauma while surrounded by people who actually cared about my well-being. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I belonged somewhere, instead of just existing on the margins of other people's happiness. Moving to Seattle turned out to be the best decision I'd ever made for myself. Diana helped me find a position in the cardiac intensive care unit at Seattle General Hospital, where my experience with trauma patients and my attention to detail made me an immediate asset to the medical team. Dr. Richardson, the department head, welcomed me during my first week with words that still make me emotional. Diana has told us so much about you, and we're thrilled to have someone with your skills and compassion joining our team. We believe in supporting our staff through both professional and personal challenges, so please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything during your transition. Working in an environment where colleagues actually supported each other instead of competing was a revelation. My nursing supervisor, Janet Rodriguez, took time to help me adjust to new protocols and introduce me to other staff members who went out of their way to make me feel welcome. "We heard you've been through some serious family trauma," Janet said during one of our early conversations. "I want you to know that we consider our team to be a work family, and we protect each other here. If you ever need to talk or need extra support during difficult days, we've got your back." 6 months into my new job, I received an unexpected visit at the hospital. Thomas Mitchell, one of the paramedics who had responded to my poisoning emergency back home, had tracked me down through mutual contacts in the medical community. "I've been thinking about your case ever since that night," Thomas explained when he appeared at the nurse's station during my lunch break. "I kept wondering if you were okay and whether that investigation led to any justice. When I heard through the grapevine that you'd moved to Seattle, I had to come check on you personally." Thomas was nothing like the men I'd dated before. He was genuine, thoughtful, and had a sense of humor that could make me laugh even during stressful shifts. More importantly, he understood the medical field and respected the demands of healthcare work rather than resenting them. Our first real date happened 3 weeks later when Thomas flew back to Seattle, specifically to take me to dinner. We talked for 4 hours about everything except my family trauma, focusing instead on our shared love of hiking, obscure medical documentaries, and terrible reality TV shows that we were both embarrassed to admit watching. "I have to be honest with you," Thomas said as we walked along the waterfront after dinner. "I've never met anyone who survived something as horrific as what your sister did to you. I keep expecting you to be broken or bitter, but instead, you're one of the kindest, strongest people I've ever known." I explained to Thomas how finding Diana and the foster family had taught me the difference between surviving trauma and letting trauma define me. I learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It means choosing to build something better with the life you have left. Thomas became a regular presence in my life over the following months, flying to Seattle every few weeks and eventually requesting a transfer to a Seattle area ambulance service. His persistence and patience with my ongoing therapy work showed me what it felt like to be with someone who saw my healing as a journey worth supporting rather than a problem to be solved. Diana and Thomas got along immediately, bonding over their shared protectiveness toward me and their mutual appreciation for medical gallows humor. "I like him," Diana told me after Thomas's third visit. "He doesn't treat you like you're fragile, but he also doesn't minimize what you've been through. That's exactly the kind of person who deserves to be in your life." The foster family embraced Thomas with the same warmth they'd shown me, including him in family gatherings and treating him like he'd always been part of their extended circle. James and Patricia's acceptance meant everything to me, especially since I'd never experienced what it felt like to introduce a romantic partner to family members who actually wanted me to be happy. Through my work at Seattle General, I started volunteering with a nonprofit organization called Medical Abuse Survivors Network, which provided support and advocacy for people who had experienced medical trauma or poisoning by family members or caregivers. My first speaking engagement was terrifying, but sharing my story helped 3 other survivors find the courage to report their own situations to law enforcement. Your willingness to speak publicly about systematic family poisoning has given us language and framework for understanding similar cases. The organization's director, Dr. Lisa Park, explained after my presentation, "Most people don't realize how common this type of abuse is or how sophisticated the perpetrators can be. Working with other survivors taught me that my experience with Jessica wasn't unique, though the organ harvesting element was particularly rare. I met people whose family members had poisoned them for insurance money inheritance disputes, or simply because they enjoyed having power over someone's health and well-being. One survivor, Margaret Thompson, had been poisoned by her adult daughter for 3 years before discovering the truth. The hardest part wasn't the physical damage, Margaret told our support group. It was accepting that someone who claimed to love me had been willing to torture me for financial gain. These conversations helped me process my own feelings about Jessica's motivations and my parents' complicity. Understanding that toxic family dynamics follow predictable patterns made it easier for me to recognize that nothing I could have done differently would have changed Jessica's fundamental character or my parents' willingness to sacrifice me for their own benefit. Thomas proposed to me exactly 1 year after we met during a hiking trip to Mount Rainier that Diana and the Foster family had secretly helped him plan. He waited until we reached the summit before getting down on one knee with a ring that incorporated my grandmother's diamond, which Diana had helped him obtain from my grandmother's estate. America Foster Williams. Thomas said, using both my biological and adoptive family names, "You're the strongest, kindest, most incredible person I've ever known. Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how loved and valued you are?" I said yes while crying so hard that other hikers stopped to make sure I was okay. Diana had hidden nearby with a camera to capture the moment, and the Foster family surprised us with a celebration dinner when we got back to town. Planning our wedding became a celebration of chosen family rather than obligation to blood relatives. Diana served as my maid of honor while Marcus and Elena Foster stood up as additional attendants. Thomas's sister, Kate, flew in from Chicago to serve as a bridesmaid, and his parents welcomed me with genuine affection that still surprises me sometimes. The wedding itself was everything I'd never dared to imagine, a small, intimate ceremony focused on love and commitment rather than social expectations or family politics. Patricia Foster cried during our vows, and James walked me down the aisle with pride and joy that felt completely authentic. During our reception, Diana gave a speech that perfectly captured our journey from separated twins to chosen sisters to true family. America taught me that healing is possible even after the worst betrayal, and that love can grow stronger in the places where trust was broken. Thomas, you're getting an incredible woman who will love you with the same fierce loyalty she's shown me. Thomas and I bought a house 10 minutes away from Diana and her partner Rebecca, creating a chosen family cluster that provides the stability and support I'd never experienced before. We host monthly dinners where everyone contributes something to the meal, and we share stories about our work, our dreams, and our gratitude for finding each other. 6 months after our wedding, I received a letter from Jessica in prison. She had written to apologize and ask for my forgiveness, claiming that therapy had helped her understand how wrong her actions had been. I read the letter once and then threw it away without responding. "You don't owe her anything," Diana said when I told her about Jessica's letter. "Forgiveness is something you do for yourself when you're ready, not something you do because someone else wants to feel better about their choices." I've learned that healing doesn't require forgiving people who tried to destroy you. Instead, it requires building a life so full of genuine love and purpose that their toxicity becomes irrelevant to your happiness. Today, 2 years after Jessica's conviction, I work as a charge nurse in Seattle General's cardiac ICU, where I help save lives every day instead of just trying to survive. Thomas and I are planning to start a family, knowing that any children we raise will grow up surrounded by people who celebrate their existence rather than resenting it. Diana and I co-founded a scholarship program for nursing students who have survived family trauma, and we've helped fund the education of 12 students who might not have had opportunities otherwise. Giving back has become one of the most meaningful parts of my healing journey. The Foster family continues to treat me like the daughter they always wanted, and Thomas's family has embraced me with equal warmth. I finally understand what family is supposed to feel like: safe, supportive, and genuinely invested in each other's well-being. Most importantly, I've learned that surviving trauma doesn't make you broken or damaged. It can make you stronger, more compassionate, and more appreciative of the good people who come into your life. Jessica tried to destroy me, but instead she led me to discover who I really am and what I'm truly capable of achieving. The life lesson I carry with me every day is this family isn't defined by shared blood or legal obligations. True family consists of people who protect your well-being, celebrate your successes, and love you for exactly who you are rather than who they want you to become. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from people who see you as disposable, even if they share your last name or raised you from childhood. Trust your instincts when someone's actions don't match their words, and never let others gaslight you about your own experiences. The people who truly love you will believe you, support you, and help you heal, rather than minimizing your pain or making excuses for those who hurt you. Your life has value that goes far beyond what others can take from you or profit from your existence. You deserve to be surrounded by people who see that value and protect it fiercely. And sometimes, the family you choose becomes more precious than the family you were born into because they choose to love you on purpose rather than by accident. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family members who disguise their cruelty as love? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below about how you found the strength to choose your own well-being over family expectations. Please like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories about surviving family trauma, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it helps you remember that you deserve to be truly cherished by the people in your life. Take care of yourselves, and remember that your healing matters more than anyone else's comfort with your truth.